There are days when you wake up and it feels like something inside you went missing overnight. You still go through the motions, brush your teeth, check your phone, reply to messages, but it all feels distant, like you're watching your own life from the outside. Nothing is wrong exactly, yet nothing feels right either. You look around and realize you've been moving for years, but you don't remember why. That quiet question in your chest, "What happened to me?" starts echoing louder. This is the moment most people call being lost. But in psychology, it's not losing your way. It's losing your old map. Carl Jung said the psyche has a rhythm of its own. When you've outgrown the life you built, your mind begins to withdraw energy from it. That's why things that used to excite you suddenly feel empty. Why you can't fake motivation no matter how hard you try. It's not failure, it's transition. Your deeper self is quietly pulling you back toward what's real. The confusion you feel isn't a breakdown, it's a recalibration. The mind is saying, "You've completed one chapter. Don't rush to fill the silence. Something new is forming underneath." You might not see it yet, but this lostness has direction. Every time you feel detached, your unconscious is reorienting you. Every pause, every disconnection, every "I don't know anymore" is part of the preparation. You're not lost, you're being summoned home. Jung called this the return to the self, the moment when life stops answering to logic and begins to answer to truth. So if you're here right now, listening to this, it's not random. The part of you that's tired of pretending finally found a door back to itself. Please don't rush to close it. This is where your return begins. Most people think being lost means taking the wrong path, but the truth is, sometimes you feel lost right in the middle of the life you asked for. You wake up inside your own success and still feel like a stranger. You have the job, the relationship, the apartment. But the satisfaction doesn't land. It's like eating food that fills your stomach but never your hunger. That's not confusion, it's misalignment. You're living a version of yourself that used to fit, but doesn't anymore. This is what psychology calls the withdrawal of psychic energy. Jung noticed that when something in your life stops matching your deeper self, your mind starts to pull energy away from it. That's why your goals suddenly feel meaningless. Your motivation disappears and your emotions go flat. It's not laziness. It's your inner compass saying, "We've been here long enough." The outer life keeps moving, but the inner one has already packed its bags. You're halfway between identities. The person you were no longer feels real, but the person you're becoming hasn't yet taken shape. That's why this stage feels like floating in fog. You might notice subtle signs. Conversations feel heavier. Small talk drains you. And the things you used to force excitement for now feel like noise. You keep trying to reignite old passions, but they no longer answer you. It's not because you've changed for the worse. It's because you're changing for truth. The energy that once fed ambition is now being redirected toward awareness. Your system is trying to update itself, but your ego keeps pressing cancel. Think of it like your phone running an old operating system. Everything still works, but slower, glitchier, more fragile. You keep ignoring the notification to update because you don't want to restart. But the longer you wait, the more things stop functioning. That's how the psyche operates too. The discomfort you feel isn't the end of something. It's the push to install a deeper version of you. And this is where most people get stuck. They think motivation will bring them back. So they add new goals, new routines, new affirmations, trying to fix what isn't broken. But this phase can't be solved through effort. It asks for surrender. You don't need more drive. You need more honesty. Ask yourself, what am I pretending still works? What am I forcing myself to care about? Those questions aren't threats. they're openings. Because here's what few people realize. Being lost isn't the absence of direction, it's the stripping away of distractions. The path hasn't disappeared, it's just gone quiet until you can walk it consciously. That silence you're fighting is not emptiness, it's incubation. What's forming right now is your next level of clarity. So when you feel unmotivated or detached, don't panic. Don't label it depression or failure right away. It might be your unconscious preparing the soil. Something in you is being uprooted, not because it died, but because it outgrew its container. And the more you resist that growth, the louder the ache will become. If this meant something to you, subscribe and stay. Your presence truly matters here. Carl Jung once said that what you call chaos is often your soul trying to reorganize itself. The feeling of being lost isn't a mistake in your path. It's the mind recalibrating its compass. When you've lived too long in roles, routines, and expectations that no longer fit, your psyche begins to withdraw cooperation. It stops sending energy to what's false. That's why even simple things start feeling heavy, why you wake up tired, why joy feels far away, why silence becomes uncomfortable. The self isn't punishing you, it's asking for your attention. Jung called this the conflict between the persona and the self. The persona is the mask you wear to function in the world, the version of you that says the right things, performs, pleases, adapts. It's not bad. It's necessary. But when the mask becomes your identity, the self starts to suffocate. That suffocation shows up as confusion, apathy, and quiet despair. You think something's wrong with you, but it's actually your inner world trying to breathe again. The psyche doesn't break. It speaks. And the language it uses is emotion. Every numb morning, every restless night, every "I don't know who I am anymore" is the unconscious trying to restore balance. Jung compared this process to nature. When the seasons change, the old leaves must fall. The tree doesn't resist. It releases what's done so it can bloom again. But the human ego clings. It calls decay failure. It labels silence as emptiness. It tries to fix what's meant to transform. That's why suffering intensifies. The more you resist renewal, the louder your soul must shout. Pain, in Jung's view, is not an enemy. It's an invitation. It's the signal that your deeper nature wants to return to wholeness. So when you feel directionless, understand this. Your consciousness is expanding faster than your external life can adjust. You're no longer aligned with the same ambitions, values, or rhythms. What once made sense doesn't anymore. Not because you've lost meaning, but because you've outgrown it. The old frame can't hold your new size, and until you stop forcing yourself to fit, that friction will keep repeating as exhaustion, burnout, or emotional flatness. Jung said the psyche has one ultimate goal: to become whole. Not perfect, not happy all the time, but integrated. To bring every exiled part of you, anger, fear, sadness, desire, back into conversation with who you believe you are. Wholeness means letting your inner contradictions coexist instead of choosing sides. You can be strong and uncertain, brave and afraid, grounded and still searching. When you allow those opposites to meet, the war inside you starts to quiet. This is how the self begins to emerge, not through control, but through reconciliation. So if you've been calling yourself lost, maybe it's time to call it something else. Maybe you're not lost, you're being reassembled. The confusion, the pauses, the loneliness, they're all evidence that your mind is cleaning the mirror so you can see yourself clearly again. It's not the end of your story. It's the moment the author picks up the pen. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll look deeper into what happens beneath this surface, how the unconscious mind creates these experiences on purpose, and how you can start hearing what it's been trying to say all along. At the deepest level of your psychology, nothing happens by accident. The moments when your life seems to fall apart are not random. They are orchestrated by the unconscious to restore balance. Jung discovered that when you ignore your deeper needs for too long, the unconscious begins to send signals: tension in the body, recurring dreams, sudden fatigue, the strange feeling that something's off. These are not symptoms to suppress. They are instructions. The psyche doesn't speak in words. It speaks through patterns. Think of your conscious mind as the surface of the ocean, organized, visible, manageable. Beneath it lies the vast unconscious, where everything you've avoided, denied, or forgotten continues to live. Every feeling you push down to stay polite, every truth you silenced to be loved, every part of you that was labeled too much or not enough, they never vanished. They sank. But nothing that sinks stays still forever. Pressure builds. Eventually, those buried emotions rise like waves, disrupting the surface until you finally look down. What feels like chaos is actually communication. Your mind isn't breaking, it's breaking open. This is what Jung called compensation, when the unconscious pushes up what the ego has neglected. If you've been pretending to be strong for too long, it will create circumstances that force you to feel vulnerable again. If you've been avoiding anger, it will attract people who trigger it. Not as punishment, but as therapy. The psyche restores wholeness by confrontation. Every person who irritates you, every disappointment that repeats itself, is the unconscious saying, "Here's what still needs your attention." Until you face it consciously, it will keep reappearing externally. You can see it in small moments. You promise yourself you'll rest, yet take on another project. You crave connection, yet push people away. You say you want peace, yet scroll for chaos. That's not hypocrisy. It's the unconscious running the show. It repeats what's unresolved until awareness catches up. Life becomes the mirror your mind uses to show you what you're not listening to. When you start to notice these patterns, something shifts. The blame dissolves. You realize it's not that life is against you, it's that life is precise. It keeps presenting you with what you refuse to integrate. The fight with your partner mirrors the fight you've avoided with yourself. The job you hate reflects the part of you that values approval over authenticity. The loneliness you fear is the silence where your real voice lives. Once you see this, even pain begins to feel intelligent, because it is. And that's the turning point. The moment you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this showing me?" Jung said we don't become enlightened by imagining light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you bring awareness to what's been hidden, you stop being haunted by it. The shadow loses its power the second you face it. So if you're in that space right now, confused, restless, uncertain, remember, you're not regressing, you're reorganizing. Your unconscious is trying to give birth to a more honest version of you. And every contraction hurts because it's real. Don't rush the process. Stay with the discomfort until it reveals its shape. And if you can stay just a little longer, the next realization may change how you see everything. That your lostness was never punishment. It was precision. Stay until the end, because soon you'll see what most never do. How your inner world has been guiding your return from the beginning. Imagine that somewhere deep inside you, there's a house you haven't entered in years. It's not haunted, but forgotten. Its windows are fogged with dust, the air smells faintly of rain and wood, and every step echoes like a memory trying to find its voice again. Once, this house was alive. It held your laughter, your curiosity, your unfiltered self, the one who used to speak without rehearsing and dream without asking for permission. But somewhere along the way, you locked its doors. You did it quietly, without noticing. Every time someone told you to be realistic, another window shut. Every time you swallowed your anger to keep the peace, another light went out. You built newer rooms elsewhere. Offices, relationships, identities that looked safer from the outside. But the real house was left behind, frozen in time. And the strange emptiness you feel now? It's the sound of that house calling you back. The cracks in your plans, the numb mornings, the fatigue that no sleep can fix. They're not coincidences. They're footsteps from inside, reminders that something sacred has been waiting. Jung said the parts of yourself you abandon don't disappear. They retreat into the unconscious, where they wait for your return. The dreams that feel too vivid, the sudden tears that make no sense. These are invitations from that house. The psyche doesn't destroy what's true. It hides it until you're ready to remember. You haven't lost your real self. It's just been living somewhere you stopped visiting. When you finally decide to go back, the journey is quiet. You won't need to force anything. You'll start small, listening to music you used to love, taking walks without a purpose, saying no without explaining why. Each of these acts turns a key. Each breath of honesty opens another window. And as light starts to spill through the dust, you realize the house was never broken, only patient. You might find old versions of yourself sitting on the stairs. The child who felt too much, the artist who gave up too soon, the voice that always knew when something was wrong. They're not angry. They've just been waiting for you to stop apologizing for them. As you walk from room to room, you'll see how every wall carries marks of who you used to be. Scratches of dreams, stains of laughter, fingerprints of moments that mattered. Healing is not demolition. It's remembering. And when you finally reach the center of the house, you'll notice something subtle. A faint warmth. A single beam of light leaks through a crack in the ceiling, golden and soft. It's been there all along. Steady, quiet, loyal. The pulse of your true self, waiting for you to notice. Pause here. Let that image stay with you, the house breathing again, the air clearing, the light returning. You probably know that house already. You feel it every time you try to slow down, but can't. You reach for your phone before your feet touch the floor. You scroll, you reply, you perform. Because silence makes you nervous. Somewhere inside, you know that if you stop for too long, the house will start talking again. So you fill your life with noise, projects, plans, conversations that don't mean much, just to drown out the sound of your own truth. You call it productivity, but it's really avoidance. You call it being responsible, but it's fear. You've built your whole identity around being useful, liked, and needed. But when the world finally quiets down, and it's just you and your thoughts, there's that familiar ache, an emptiness that success can't touch. You smile on the outside, but feel like a ghost inside your own life. Jung said that when the inner life is neglected, it retaliates through the body. That's why you wake up exhausted even after resting, why your chest tightens during small talk, and why the weekend doesn't really recharge you. Your psyche is trying to tell you, I'm tired of pretending. You've spent years learning how to make others comfortable, but forgot what peace feels like in your own skin. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you leave another light off in that house. Every time you bite your tongue to keep harmony, you move one step further from your center. You wonder why you feel invisible, but invisibility has been your survival skill all along. You learned to shrink because it was safer than being misunderstood. But that safety has turned into a cage. Maybe the real reason you feel stuck isn't because you don't know what to do. It's because you're afraid of what happens if you stop doing everything else. And here's the paradox. The healing you're searching for won't come from trying harder. It begins the moment you stop running. When you let yourself cry for no reason. When you finally rest without guilt. When you say, I don't have to earn my right to exist. That's when the house exhales for the first time in years. Maybe the tears you hide are not weakness. They're your soul's way of exhaling. If you feel restless, that's good. It means your real self is still alive, trying to find a way back. All you have to do is pause long enough to hear it. Close your eyes. Notice your heartbeat. That's not anxiety. It's memory. It's your own rhythm, waiting to be recognized again. Pause here. You don't have to fix anything right now. Just notice that you're still here, and that's already a beginning. You've spent so much time trying to find your way back that you never stopped to realize. Maybe you were never supposed to. Maybe the goal was never to return to who you were, but to meet who you were always meant to become. Carl Jung called this individuation. The process of becoming whole by integrating the parts you've denied. The depression, the anger, the numbness. They're not flaws to fix. They're signals. They mark the point where the false self ends and the real one begins. You're not broken. You're between selves. Most people call this a crisis, but Jung saw it as a transformation. When your outer life stops matching your inner truth, your psyche forces a confrontation. It makes you uncomfortable, not to hurt you, but to wake you. The disorientation you feel is your old identity losing its grip. You're not falling apart. You're being rearranged. And the confusion, that's the space between destruction and rebirth. The place where new meaning begins to form. You might notice that lately, what once inspired you now feels heavy. Conversations that used to energize you now drain you. The things that used to define you no longer fit. That's because your energy is recalibrating. The traits you once suppressed, your sensitivity, your honesty, your boundaries, are rising again. They're not weaknesses. They're your navigation system. When you stop fighting them, they start guiding you. Jung said the soul has one instinct above all, to grow toward wholeness, and growth always involves contradiction. You can be strong and uncertain, confident and scared, calm and grieving. Wholeness isn't about being consistent. It's about being complete. When you accept your contradictions instead of hiding them, peace stops being something you chase and starts being something you are. It's time to change the language you use about yourself. You used to say, I'm lost. Now you can say, I'm realigning. You used to say, I'm falling behind. Now you can say, I'm preparing for something deeper. You used to say, I don't know who I am anymore. Now you can say, I'm finally becoming honest. Words are powerful. They shape your relationship with life. Every time you speak with more compassion, you shift your entire nervous system from defense to connection. Language doesn't just describe reality, it creates it. This is how healing begins. Not when you find all the answers, but when you stop demanding them. When you can sit in uncertainty and still trust that something meaningful is forming. You may not recognize yourself right now, and that's okay. It means you've stopped playing a role and started becoming a person. Maybe you're not lost after all. Maybe you're just returning to the parts of you that always knew the way. There's a quiet strength that comes from no longer needing to prove yourself. You stop chasing explanations, stop forcing outcomes, stop apologizing for existing. You begin to sense that peace isn't found at the end of the path. It's what's guiding your every step. That's why the people who finally slow down often find clarity waiting for them. You don't have to try harder. You just have to stop running from what's true. So if you're here, in this strange in-between, don't rush. Don't look back at what's ending, and don't panic about what's next. Just breathe. The world inside you is reorganizing piece by piece. Stay patient. It's sacred work. Most people quit right before the meaning appears. Don't. Stay until it unfolds. Because what's coming next isn't an ending. It's the first moment you'll finally feel at home in yourself. Coming home to yourself isn't a dramatic awakening. It's a quiet return, built from small, honest moments. You don't rebuild the whole house at once. You open one window at a time. The first window is silence. Each morning, give yourself 5 minutes without noise, without scrolling, without planning. Just breathe. Let your thoughts wander and watch what they reveal. Silence isn't emptiness. It's the doorway back to your center. The second window is truth. Once a day, ask yourself one simple question. What do I really feel right now? Don't fix it. Don't analyze it. Just name it. Naming brings light into dark corners. That's how the unconscious becomes conscious. The third window is release. At night, before bed, scan your body. Notice the tightness in your shoulders, your jaw, your chest. Whisper to it softly, "You don't have to hold this anymore." The body always remembers what the mind tries to forget. Let it exhale. And finally, kindness. Speak to yourself the way you would to a friend who's learning to start over. Don't demand progress. Acknowledge presence. Healing doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for honesty. Pause for a moment. Picture that inner house again. Windows open, air moving, light spilling in. Every breath you take is a way of moving back in. You're not rebuilding, you're returning. One breath, one truth, one quiet act of courage at a time. If you ignore the call to return, life won't punish you, but it will keep repeating the lesson. The same patterns, the same people, the same emptiness disguised in new forms. The psyche is patient but not forgetful. It keeps bringing you back to the same point until you finally listen. You can distract yourself with busyness, achievements, or noise, but eventually, silence catches up. It always does. That's the quiet cost of avoiding your own truth. You can build a beautiful life on the outside and still feel like a guest inside it. Jung said that what you don't make conscious controls you from the shadows. When you keep abandoning yourself, life mirrors that abandonment. You attract what matches your state of awareness. You meet people who treat you the way you secretly treat yourself. Overlooked, rushed, unheard. The world isn't against you. It's showing you where you're still not home. But the opposite is also true. The moment you start choosing honesty over image, something begins to shift. You move from surviving to belonging, to yourself first, and then naturally to everything else. You stop chasing approval because peace starts to feel better than attention. You realize that fulfillment doesn't come from doing more, but from being more real. And when that happens, the smallest things start to feel sacred again. A conversation, a breath of fresh air, the sound of rain against the window. You start noticing life not as something to master, but something to meet. That's what Jung called integration. When you no longer divide yourself into right and wrong, but let all parts of you have a seat at the table. Wholeness isn't a destination. It's a way of living without exile. If you can reach this point, the struggle that once felt endless starts to make sense. Every confusion was a breadcrumb. Every loss, a redirection. You weren't lost. You were being rewritten, reshaped, reintroduced to the part of you that never left. Maybe the journey was never about finding the way. It was about remembering that you were never off it. And if this speaks to something inside you, don't let it stay just as words. Write it below as a declaration. I choose clarity. Let that sentence remind you, whenever the fog returns, that you already know the way home. When you finally stop rushing to find the way, something gentle happens. The noise fades. The air inside you clears. You start to feel a quiet pulse that was never gone. It was only drowned out by trying too hard. You look around and realize that your life doesn't need to be rebuilt from scratch. It only needs to be re-inhabited. Imagine standing in an open field at dusk. The light is soft. The ground is warm beneath your feet. You've walked a long way to get here, but now there's no destination, just presence. No map, no pressure, only the faint sound of your own breath mixing with the wind. This is what returning feels like. It isn't dramatic. It's ordinary in the most beautiful way. You start noticing small details again, the way the wind touches your skin, the way light moves across the grass. They're reminders that peace isn't something you chase. It's something that finds you when you finally stop running. Jung called this moment the return of the soul, the instant you realize you've been home all along. So tonight, before you sleep, don't plan your next step. Just whisper, I'm not lost, I'm returning. Let that sentence echo softly inside you. You don't need to know what comes next. Life does. Thank you for walking this far. Your presence here matters more than you know. The journey doesn't end. It only changes shape. Somewhere beyond this quiet, another door waits to open. Until then, keep walking inward.